Good afternoon to you. Mark Sott with HurricaneTrack.com here. It is now Friday, the 9th day of June 2023. Time for the Hurricane Outlook and discussion. And today, really going to jump into this big battle here of these two titans. Literally now, the El Nino that's coming on. That was just announced officially from NOAA the other day, the Climate Prediction Center. And this very warm Atlantic, more and more people taking notice of this. Literally in just uncharted territory with some of the warm temperatures we're seeing relative to average. Now let me preface that a lot of what we're going to be talking about here are anomalies, departures from the long-term average. And in this case, we are talking about positive anomalies or departures on the plus side of things, and in the Atlantic at least substantially so. So how will this El Nino versus the Atlantic scenario play out throughout the hurricane season? I'm going to try to answer that to the best of my ability. I don't know for sure, but I just want to show you some things here that are really remarkable and really underscore how important it is what we're seeing, because it hasn't happened that I can recall, certainly not in my lifetime. All right, and that's pretty serious, okay? And we're going to take a look at some other things, including tracking hurricanes. How do we do it? What are the tools we use? With even a lesson on how to use a paper map. Remember those? Well, you will after today. First of all, a real quick tour of what's happening in the tropics, which is nothing. That's great. Nothing over the next 48 and 168 hours. I used to say 120. Same thing in the Eastern Pacific and the Central Pacific. Don't want to leave them out. Nothing going on in that area, but the tropics are active. If we go over to Tropical Tidbits and look at the storm page that Dr. Cowan has set up here, several of these throughout the globe. I'll show you this in a minute. Actually, let's just jump to it right now. We're going to come back to this because this is part of my Tracking Hurricanes segment. There are our systems. Can you tell where the favorability is in the upward motion? Yes, it's over in this part of the world. Interestingly enough, not in the Western Pacific, not in the Eastern Pacific, and certainly central bleeding over to the Western Pacific, as I said. We're talking about the Indian Ocean here, straddling either side. There's the Bay of Bengal, and then a little invest area there touching upon Asia. Then there's our Typhoon Guchol, or however you pronounce it, well to the east of the Philippines. Those showing up here under the storm page here, these current storms from Dr. Cowan's site. Look at that big old truck tire eye with our typhoon out there well east of the Philippines. So tropics are active, just not in the Atlantic basin. But I didn't want to ignore the other areas. Now listen, this satellite picture, there's a lot more, well, series of pictures, this animation I should say, there's a lot more going on here than meets the eye. First of all, no organized areas of deep thunderstorm activity seen in the tropics. That's good news. But what I want you to watch is how the sun is coming across the ocean here and how reflective that is. And I don't have it going far enough back. I should have done an animation earlier for when it's over here. It's just the way the frames are set up that Dr. Cowan has. You can't go too far back, unfortunately. It'd be neat if you could build like a 100-frame loop. That'd be cool. But when the sun comes up, and it's called the sun glint, it reflects off the ocean there. It's very, very bright, especially out here. And it's brighter than normal. The reflectivity is more. A few people have noticed it. I saw them talking about it on Twitter. And the reason why, think about it, when the ocean is stirred up and you get white caps on it and just the way that the wavelengths of the sunlight come in, a windy ocean where the wind is affecting it, with an A, affecting it, it's just a little bit duller. But when the ocean is almost a flat calm, it becomes like a mirror, and that sun reflects right back at the satellite. And it was very bright the last few days. I'm not making this up. It was a couple people talked about it on Twitter. I looked, I was like, wow, you're not kidding. And the reason, and this is very important, that it is more reflective is because the ocean is calmer because the trade winds are almost non-existent out there. They are very slack, and it's those trades that stir up the ocean and make those waves. And you ever been on a cruise down there? You might see those white caps out across the ocean. And I've been hearing from people on the ground there in the Caribbean about how hot it is. And part of that is the subsidence or the sinking air related to what's happening in the atmosphere. But the other part is the lack of very strong, let's get rid of me for a few moments, We don't have a very strong, big old subtropical ridge sitting out here just cranking those trades across like this. That's not happening. And that is helping to warm the Atlantic to record numbers. It really is. These anomalies, the departures from average. A couple people down here telling me water temperatures are where they should be in September. And it's only June. So there you go. All right, so we do have a little frontal boundary down here. There's another front coming through here. Finally getting rid of some of that smoke across the northeast and the mid-Atlantic. But as you can see, nothing in the deep tropics right now. There is a Saharan air layer prevalent out here, dry mid-level air. And by the way, you can have Saharan air layer. It's a phenomenon in and of itself. But look what you don't see. You don't see this big blast of dust out there. Duh. If you did, the ocean would be churned up and the sea surface temperatures would be cooler and the trades would be stronger. They are all related. So just an incredible phenomenon happening, and kind of alarming. These warm temperatures could make some very interesting things happen. And that's the problem, is we don't really know. We're seeing a lot of guidance. I'll show you that in a few minutes. Leaning one way when you think the El Nino is here and it's going to save us all. So back to that graphic there, just the thumbnail for a moment. It's El Nino versus the Atlantic. It really is. And you see this here. I'll show you on the main graphic in a minute of it. Those are two powerhouse phenomenon in the ocean that we really have to watch. Let's just get to it right now. Here's the Mercator map from the NOAA Coral Reef Watch daily 5-kilometer sea surface temperature anomalies. And it's that term there, anomalies, departure from the long-term average. And it goes back about 30 years. I'm going to use black here to highlight this. Yes, there's our El Nino. It's not real strong. It's there, but it's not real strong. There's that cold PDO look that I talk about. Or that's also the Pacific Meridional Mode, or PMM. It's negative. Basically, all those blues mean the water is colder than normal, and pretty substantial there with some of those deep blues. And then there's the Atlantic. All right, the Atlantic basin. This is just, it's absurd. It really is. There's no other way to paint this, and you cannot dismiss it and junk science. Oh, it's caused by underwater volcanoes or whatever. I mean, it's just not. It's a relaxation of the trades out here, a lack of storminess in the North Atlantic, and other factors that oceanographers are certainly looking into, because it's really unexpected, generally speaking. Some of the models were hinting at it a few months ago, but it was like, can't get that warm. Well, here it is. This is yesterday. This map updates always a day behind. This is the reality. And you can't also argue, well, that's just somebody's got an agenda. You never believe those maps. Well, I believe the people that are telling me, that live in the Bahamas and in the Virgin Islands, that are literally telling me it is just cooking us down here. The lack of trades. And we even have a couple of webcams down there we watch. Our cams, and the trees aren't blowing very hard. It's just like, and that's truth. That's truth, okay? So what does this mean? Well, normally the El Nino, just a quick lesson here, would give us a lot of rising motion over the Pacific, hurricanes galore probably, strong upper level winds that would cut across this part of the Atlantic and the Caribbean and create wind shear. Generally, El Nino means less favorable conditions in the Atlantic, sinking air, that kind of thing. But it has to get there. We're not quite there yet. We're just at the very bottom of the threshold of El Nino. A weak El Nino isn't going to do it. Not in the face of what we're seeing with this ridiculously warm Atlantic. Now we come to that. Again, all of these anomalies here, more rising motion, more instability possible. There's a few people that I follow that are really monitoring that. The instability, is the air dry and stable and warm, or is it moist and unstable and warm? Because warm, dry air isn't going to do it. You need, remember we talked about this the other day, you need moisture in the mid-levels of the atmosphere, instability through that moisture, cold air above it, so that moisture can be buoyant, or the moisture-laden air can be buoyant and make tropical convection. That helps that to happen. Also, very important, the slow trade winds means that the air can pile up and converge. and that helps to just set these things off. We saw that one after another in 2020 when the water temperatures were like this. Actually, this is warmer. And we saw it in 2005, and it took a lot later in the season, but we also saw it in 2010. But 05 and 2020, it was just storm after storm after storm, and every 2 weeks you'd get a really strong one. And, culminating with Wilma, and actually beyond that, as you remember, in the 2005 season, and certainly in 2020. We kept on going even after the season was over. Now, the one thing is this El Nino should help to tamper this down a little bit, but it doesn't mean that it has to, because we have not seen this configuration before, not in the modern era. So models are going to struggle with it. We're just going to have to wait and see. And speaking of models, we call those indicators. Go look at our friends here at the Storm 2K website. By the way, you can become a member. It's free. It's a great community, very well moderated, no BS. It's awesome. I really like it. I've been a member for a long time, and in full disclosure, they have become one of our patrons. As a community, Storm 2K is actually one of our patrons through Patreon, and we appreciate that. And the info here is really good, just kind of scrolling through. This is what I mean. Look at some of this data here. This is the CFS V2. Then you have the NMME spitting out all these different precipitation anomalies. I showed this the other day. It's I don't want to say it's a crapshoot, but like it should just be dry and very little hurricane activity because there's a pretty good El Nino coming. But this very warm Atlantic makes things much more questionable from the model's perspective. Those are just guidance. They are not a forecast. They're a guidance piece of the puzzle. And in reality, like we really don't know. You think about the NOAA forecast, the forecast from Dr. Phil Klotzbach and others that spell out there is a lot of uncertainty. All right, Adrian here, we know him as SFL Kane. That's Adrian to me, and others that know him down there in Southeast Florida. Yeah, the longer we go without seeing trade winds increase the Atlantic, the more concerning it becomes later. You got to be following that. And then Dr. Is he a doctor or not? I can't remember. Maybe I just gave Michael Lowry a PhD. Don't think he's a PhD, but Michael Lowry, a friend of ours, he's written about it there in a Substack post if you want to read it. I'll put the link to this thread in the description of today's video. But then look at this. This is great. And this person is down in Barbados, I do believe, or in the Windward Islands, close enough. It doesn't specifically say Barbados, but this is a great example. All right, a month ago, I said April 28th, 2023 is trailing 2005 and a distance behind 2010 in terms of East Atlantic heat. Well, now we got a new champion. I mean, look at what we've got. This is 05, okay, and look at the warmth that was happening, and this was a very big season, June 8th, 2005, and that's what it looked like. Archives are important. There's 2010, another one of those like, whoa, this could be a really big season. And then there's 2023. Not even close. I mean, look at that. You're just scrolling and comparing those. Wow. Wow. I mean, the Atlantic is a huge wild card. I cannot emphasize that enough. And I don't know what's going to happen. I think being honest about it, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to lead to just a ton of storms out in the ocean that never affect anybody because the pattern is just very hostile to the west. So we have a lot of ACE and a lot of named storms well east of 60 degrees longitude, let's say. That's one possibility. We go back to that map right there with all of this warmth sitting out in here. Maybe we just get a ton of activity in this corridor through here roughly and very little gets through. But that could be wishful thinking because it's like buying, this is a terrible analogy because the odds are just so overwhelming. You'll see. It's like buying a bunch of lottery tickets. Yeah, you still have a little bit better chance of winning. Bad analogy because the odds are still like 1 billion to 1, right? But the more activity we have, my point is, you would think that one or two of those systems could get far enough west to really impact land. And as they say, it only takes one. So a very puzzling, like, I don't know. So a lot is really going to come down. We've said this a lot lately. How does this evolve? And does this stay in place? And again, one of the clues to monitoring how that goes are our Hofmoeller diagram analyses from various sites. This one is from, I don't know, he's a PhD, Dr. Michael Ventris. And so this is the past. This is where we've been. These are your westerly wind bursts. These are your stronger trades, lesser trades. And then here is where we are right now. And then this is all the future down here. This is the forecast, right? So in the Central Pacific and the equatorial region of the Central and Eastern Pacific, all that blue, trades. No more red showing up, at least in this particular plot. Okay? So what is that going to do to the ENSO, the El Nino? It could stifle it a little bit. As we get through June, this is going to matter. It's kind of like in basketball, and you're down 3, the other team's got the ball, and you only got about 2 minutes to go. You got to do something, because the clock's going to run out. That El Nino is going to have to get really amped up to put the kibosh on August and September especially. Yeah, we worry about October, sure, but the peak months of August and September, and then really that 30 days in September, we're going to have to see more of these reds right here really start to show up out through here near the date line to help those westerly winds. That's what those mean. Those give us westerly wind bursts at about 5,000 feet in the atmosphere to help get that conveyor belt keeping going. It's kind of like right now with that blue showing up, the conveyor belt is starting to slow down a little bit, and it's not going as fast. So just think about that. And then, of course, in the Atlantic, basically there's been a lack of trades, and there'll continue to be a lack of trades. You're not seeing any of that over here. And this, of course, is your longitude area, right? And we're going to get to latitude and longitude in a minute in more detail. But this basically represents the Atlantic basin. No strong trades seen anytime over the next week or so. Wow. And so that means everything will just continue to get warmer and warmer relative to average. All right. Tracking hurricanes when they do form. How do we track them? A lot of interesting technology these days. I just want to do a real quick refresher for you. National Hurricane Center has a bunch. Our first line of defense, of course, satellite imagery. Not necessarily in order here. Aircraft recon, I think, comes in next. And then we get, when the cyclones get close to land, we use radar imagery. And then there are experimental products and tracking maps. We'll talk about that too. But there's websites. We got a lot of them. I showed you Tropical Tidbits. We all know that extremely popular and very useful site. And there are plenty of others out there. I use University of Wisconsin a lot. The CIMSS, Cooperative Institute for Meteorological Satellite Studies. And one of those products, I'll just show you right here. Yep, you can get some good satellite imagery like this. Shows the Atlantic Basin. That's one of them. I like the winds and analyses for wind shear and different vorticity. Yeah, I'll show you vorticity often. There's my favorite 850 millibar vorticity. And we'll zoom in on this and show you. These are the products. This is how we track what's out there in its formative stage and once things get going. We also use, of course, digital, online, apps, whatever, tracking maps, the computer world. And those are fantastic. You know, you remember Storm Pulse from the late 2000s? You know what I mean? Like, what's 08, like 09, 2010, somewhere around there, Storm Pulse. They're still around, by the way. An amazing online tracking service. We even had at HurricaneTrack.com a long time ago some of the very first interactive tracking maps way back, hold on, in 2000. Some of you weren't even born then, right? It's true. We've come a long way. And then we kind of like didn't get left behind, but we kind of did. But now we're back. And we do have this great interactive map with all these different layers. This is on our Hurricane Track Insider site. There we go. Move that out of the way. This was developed by a gentleman over in the UK, Will Woodgate. But the point is, there is amazing tracking map technology. We can put our cams on there, add all kinds of stuff. Look, he even put the ENSO regions on there for me. Thank you, Mr. Woodgate. But yes, we have a lot of tools available to track hurricanes once they form. But one of my favorites, don't want to forget the Hurricane Center site. And of course, we have the cone. We'll talk about the cone another time because we're going to continue this sort of tutorial session talking about hurricanes and how we track them and then impacts and stuff like that. But this is what a static PNG or ping file, sometimes they are GIFs or GIFs or however the heck you say it. And this is a static tracking map from the Hurricane Center, of course. But I grew up with these guys right here, these paper guys. Oh, I got to show you. Sorry. These. In fact, the ones I had as a kid were small. They were like 8.5 by 14. And I thought, man, when I get older, I want to change that. And that's how I started my business. I started producing big poster size hurricane tracking maps all the way back in 1996, published a few thousand of them that year, and ever since, hundreds and hundreds of thousands, because the paper map is the way to go. But these maps are harder to come by these years. It's still a few TV stations and grocery stores. That's what it looks like, big old thing. That it's upside down, isn't it? Sorry. That's funny. There you go. We got it right. So the paper map, still an oldie but a goodie. But how do you actually track it? I think we've kind of lost the art of that. So I know that some people prefer the digital method, and that's fine. But hey, you get one of these maps, you buy one from our store, you might have one from your TV station or a grocery store. How do you use it? Well, we do it with latitude and longitude. The information comes out from our friends at the National Hurricane Center. When there's an advisory, you click on it, and there you go. I'll show you that real quick. Get your advisories. Let's go back last year and use Ian as an example. And let's just jump out to the 26th. The public advisory at 5 a.m. Ian becomes a hurricane, blah, 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 blah. And there was the location, Latin Long. So you take that, 18.2, 82 west, and you plot that, right? Now, as I said, we have automatic stuff like our map. The Hurricane Center updates theirs. But on a paper map, how do you plot these things? Well, I took a picture of mine to show you, and we don't have those lat longs from the advisory on this one because it's just a certain extent of the paper here. But, you find, let's say that the hurricane, Hurricane X, we'll call it, is located at 56.5 west by, we'll call it 20 degrees or so north latitude. And they usually do it latitude first. So 20 north by 56.5 west. So there's your 20 north right there. I know I don't have that located like I do here. It's just a picture. And you just find your lat long. There's 20 north. There's 55 right here. There's 56, halfway to 57. So it would be about right there. And you just put a little dot. Boom, right there. And then the next advisory comes out, and maybe the latitude and longitude is that. And then the next one is that. It's every 6 hours or so. And you just plot along. And when you're all done, you can connect them if you like, and you have a nice historical reference to your hurricane season. Latitude and longitude. Remember, the longitude lines are these guys. They go long ways. The latitude lines go this way. Like if you put them together, it'd be like a ladder. Latitude and longitude, and it's always in like 1 decimal place, right? So like 56.2 west, 22.7 north. They don't do it like 62.8888. It's not that precise. And a little hint here, it's always the center of the center, especially when you have a hurricane with an eye. It's the center of the eye. But very importantly, let's say you plot something right down here, and you got your plot just right. You got your Sharpie. Boop, you plopped it on there. That's just a dot. And we talk about this a lot. Hurricanes are not dots. The hurricane influence could be that big, right? It could be bigger, like Sandy. In 2012, it had like a 400-mile wide, huge wind field, if not larger. So hurricane tracking, kind of a lost art on paper. Wanted to talk about it a little bit. Latitude and longitude, you get it from the National Hurricane Center. Those coordinates come out every 6 hours, and then every 3 hours when there is a watch or a warning up. And then when they get within radar range and you're going to expect a landfall, they do a cyclone update, and it becomes hourly. And the aircraft go out and do fixes, that's what they call it. And they have GPS, and they drop the drop signs, and they do all their stuff. And you have satellite estimates and whatnot. But tracking hurricanes come a long way. It really has since the 60s when we first started launching satellites, all the way to the modern era of super fast computers, awesome tracking programs, and other tools to keep up with what's what. So that's how you do it on a piece of paper, just like this baby right here, this big old map. And by the way, I've been bragging about it. I'll do it again. I drew that. I actually drew that map back in 1999. The first one was just some clip art or whatever in 1996. But by 99, I got my hands on a Power Mac G3 and Adobe Illustrator. and I drew that background map back there. I took an old piece of Defense Mapping Agency map from the University of North Carolina, Wilmington, put some tracing vellum on it. If you know geography, you know what I'm talking about, or surveying and whatnot. And I traced it with a very fine pen, and then I scanned each section into Adobe Illustrator, and then you go in, it's kind of like how they build computer models these days for like CGI, and I added little vector points all around, and it took a long time. So eventually I had it so that we had the whole coast of western parts of the basin, all the little islands down there, the latitude and longitude. It took a long time, but I drew this map. That's mine. I drew that, so it's a little piece of art. If you want to get one for yourself, good Father's Day gift. And by the way, do it soon, because I'm leaving this afternoon for a few days to go back out to the plains for some testing and some severe weather coverage. So if you want to order one of these, try to order it like as soon as you see this video so I can mail it today. Otherwise, you got to wait until sometime next week, and I'll try to still get it to you by Father's Day. Just keep that in mind, all right? The link to order will be in the description of today's video. I think I've only got about 30 left, maybe less than that. And it's cool. It's a neat little thing. No, it doesn't come with the stand, but I will roll it and put it in a tube, even though one person told me that the post office still managed to crush the tube. What can you do? All right, so that's it for today. Wow, a lot to keep up with. Luckily, nothing brewing out there right now. We'll see. Maybe towards the end of the month, there are some hints that things might start to change, but we will deal with that later on. Like I said, I'm going to be traveling over the next few days. Our partner CJ on our back-end team is going to come help. We're going to do some testing of some things while we cover some severe weather. Tomorrow, an enhanced risk in parts of Texas and Oklahoma and even Arkansas, so pay attention to that. And we might even be live on YouTube tomorrow. We'll see. We got to figure it all out. All right? All right, let me get this online for you as always. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Mark Sutt with Hurricane Track. That's us. I'll see you probably on Monday when we do the update then.